everything is helpful, but the real intention is that, but the problem we must be solved. The real problem is we are suffering with our conscious problem because we have some good feeling, some bad feeling. So if we are always with the good feeling, if we are always happy, then there will be no problem. So whenever we feel sad, whenever we feel sorrow, some unwanted feelings we have, then we want some salvation. So we tried in many ways. And because the real problem is how to solve the real problem in the consciousness. And we can find out that if you and you inquire for that, you can take the help of other people, or you can rely upon your own experience. You need not go to all the people. You may rely upon your own experience. Is it possible for you to solve any problem? And if you find out you cannot do anything, and the conclusion is that you have no business to interfere with the feeling. This is very simple. In the simple understanding that the intellect will never solve the problem. So even though the intellect takes the venture, takes the effort of solving problem, it has to come to the understanding that it can never solve the problem.
You have to go through all the work of the intellect trying to solve the problem until finally the intellect says, I cannot solve the problem. So we may spend our whole life trying to solve the problem and all of that. And then suddenly we realize, oh my God, the intellect is
useless.
And so in that moment of the intellect can't do it, and the intellect finally drops, is that the moment of when you think there's freedom?
When the intellect keeps silent, so there's the natural flow of the consciousness. Otherwise we have some struggling within the conscious level. So it goes with an uninterrupted flow. So the uninterrupted flow of our conscious feeling is the liberated mind. So the liberated mind is flowing like a river. So whenever we want something through our intellect, we unnecessarily disturb the natural flow of our mind. And most of the people in the olden days, they got this point not because of some inquiry, but because of some faith upon God. So if you put some faith upon God, thereby you place all the responsibility in the hands of God. Thereby you do not take any responsibility on your own to solve the problem. So thereby the meaning is that you should not struggle with yourself. So if you put everything in the hands of God, you do not struggle for yourself. So the main thing you have to understand, you have to come to it. You should not struggle with your own consciousness. So the intellect should not struggle to separate your consciousness. So either you place all the responsibility in the hands of God, or you yourself understand that you have no power to deal with your consciousness. Either way you may come to this. So the final thing you have to come, that you have no power to conquer your consciousness. So if you understand, all the rest will happen naturally.
Both are very difficult because to put everything, giving the reins of the chariot to God like that, that's not such an easy thing to do. If we could do that, we would just do it, wouldn't we? But it's not so easy just in a moment to give it all to God. I have full faith in God. God will do it. That is not so easy, and it's also not so easy to spend our lifetime trying to work it through the mind. Both are quite difficult.
But if you want to do something, you have to gather some idea and how you have to execute that. Thereby it is a difficult thing. But here you have to understand the incapability. So the understanding the incapability is because there is no work here. So simple understanding enough. For example, if you go through this way, we can go through this way because some doorways is there, we can go through this way. And we cannot go through this wall. So it is an evident fact. So in this way, if you understand that we cannot do, the very understanding that we cannot do is very easy. But if you think you have to get something, then only we become adamant and we are very serious. I have to be done this. Then only we are very serious. Then only we can miss the point. So if you are very simple, the matter is also very simple. For example, if some box is here with a weight of 50 kilogram, and if anybody asks us to take the box, to remove the box from here, because it is 50 kilogram, even though it is 50 kilogram, moreover it is somewhat weight, we may try to the level best to roll, either took or roll it away, we can try. But if it is the weight 1000 kilogram, but we cannot imagine, we cannot even touch, we cannot, because we can very well know we cannot take. It is more than our power, it is beyond our capacity, so we will not try. So the understanding that we cannot do something, the very understanding will operate. So we have to understand that we cannot do, because unless we come to the conclusion, we will struggle naturally, because whatever we think that we can do something, whenever we have the idea that we can do something, then we have to struggle within ourselves. However early we come to the conclusion, it is better.
So one has to reach actually a state of helplessness, complete helplessness.
Helplessness.
Can't do anything. There's nothing I can do about this. So there's a place of helplessness.
So it can be considered as helplessness if you try it the right way. But if you not trying, if you just understanding that it is impossible one. It is not a helpless situation. It is an impossible one. If you think you can do, then you cannot do. Then you may feel helpless. But it is impossible. It is impossible. If you think that you cannot go through this wall, you need not feel helpless. But you simply think it is impossible, then you will not feel any helpless situation. You need not feel any helpless situation. It is impossible and you need not try. So whenever you try to go through this wall, then only you come to a conclusion that is you feel helpless. But if you feel helpless, you may get the help of somebody else to make your help. Right. But here it is impossible, it is not necessary.
But you did say that it's either that or all your faith in God.
The heart means here whatever if you the God himself is not to solve the problem. We are not praying God to solve any problem. So if you prayed the God to solve any problem, then it is not a surrender. It is not placing everything in the hands of God. Because if you place everything in the hands of God means we do not take any responsibility to solve any problem. So if you seek the help of the God to achieve to solve any problem, then it is not surrender. So we put everything in the hands of God. Thereby we feel no responsibility to solve anything. So when we put all the responsibility in the hands of God and do not take any responsibility on our own, actually the salvation came naturally. Even though we are not doing anything, the real problem solves naturally. Because the real problem is only the conscious level. And the conscious level, the problem, it is not at all a problem. It comes and disappears naturally. Actually, it will not wait for ourselves to do anything for the salvation. But whatever comes in the conscious field, it disappears naturally. We will not wait for ourselves to solve it.
When you say, what is the relationship between God and one's own consciousness? Say God, what do you mean by God?
The God, because our intellect alone says,
Sorry?
Our intellect alone says, and our intellect alone forms the God. So when we refer God, the intellect alone says God. Our mind alone says God. Our mind alone imagine some qualities, it alone takes something God in the form of this mind. So it is not the real.
So when you said that, you just put it all in the hand, or you surrender to God, you're putting it all into your idea in your mind of God, or is it a form or is it formless?
So when we take the God, the intellect alone takes it is a God. But actually, the imaginary God is not the real God. But even though we imagine God is somebody and we may put everything in the God, it believes like that. Our intellect believes some God is there and it is omnipresent, omnipowerful, and then only it plays all the responsibility in the hands of God. So everything is done by the intellect. So even though it behaves like that, even though it is an imaginary one, in the language of the intellect, it works properly. So it produces good result. So even though the intellect, all the language of the intellect may be in the form of imagination, it works in a proper way. Even though imagine God Himself, it works properly. Thereby, even it has some faith.
What do you mean? What do you mean it works properly? Properly. What do you mean by that? It works properly. You said works properly. I don't know what you mean by how the mind works properly in that moment of putting all of your in the hands of God, all of yourself in the hands of God.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an imaginary idea, this idea of God. It's only in the intellect. But you said when you do that, it works properly. What do you mean by that?
Properly means it solves a problem.
How does it solve the problem?
Because when we put everything in the hands of God, the intellect does not take any responsibility on its own. So that is the main idea behind that. So it does not take any stand for itself, take any position for itself to solve the problem. So it withdraw from all the struggling. So when we withdraw from all our struggling, the problem solves naturally. So here the main thing is that the intellect should not assume any responsibility to solve our problem. So when the intellect keeps silent with regarding to the conscious flow of our feeling, so all conscious, even though it may be in the form of happiness, sorrow, suffering, whatever may be in the expression of consciousness, it is only a momentary one. It comes and goes naturally. But we think, our intellect alone assume that unless we do something, the problem will exist forever. It is our imagination. Our imagination says like that. So we have to do something in that conscious level. That is why it mistakenly have that kind of concept. So if you understand, we have no business to deal with anything in the conscious level. The all problem in the consciousness solves naturally, because nothing can exist for more than a fraction of a second. So that is the law of nature. So nothing can be, because there cannot be any past feeling or future feeling, only the present feeling alone is there. So each and every feeling is momentary. Moment by moment, new feeling alone can come. There cannot be any old feeling, there cannot be any future feeling. So some momentary feeling alone must be there. And each feeling disappears in the next moment, and new feeling alone can become. And that is the law of nature. But our intellect will not admit. The intellect always wants some change in the consciousness. It wants some stabilization in the consciousness. It wants to have some stabilization in good feeling, and it will always tries to keep the consciousness without having any bad feeling. So in this way, it enters into the trouble, enters into the struggle. When we do not take any action.
Sometimes we don't take any action, so but yet that being said, okay, we're not problem. Lapsing and think we're doing the right thing by not addressing the problem and letting it happen. But sometimes we're actually asked to take action. Sometimes action is required.
If you say any example, we can discuss, because something may be external. The externally, if the situation is external, you have to do something.
Yeah.
But it is psychologically, you have nothing to do.
So there's if it's psychological, internally there is nothing to do. The feeling process comes and goes. If it's an external situation,
externally you have to do something.
There may be action needed to be taken.
You have to take action. Okay. So the intellect is designed only to do something in the external world, in the outer world. But it has nothing to do with the psychological world. It has nothing to do with the conscious flow.
It's interfering with the inner world.
Yes.
And if one stops struggling in the inner world, we
Ah.
can still take action as needed in the outer world.
Outer world you have to do, without intellect we cannot survive in the world.
Yeah.
So intellect alone is the only thing by which alone we can live in this world. So we have to use the full extent. We can use our intellect to the full extent in the external world. Then only we can live in this world. Then only we can solve, we can live, everything is possible only with the help of intellect. But here in the psychological world alone, if you keep some standard, this must be, I must have always happiness, I should not have any anger, I should not have any fear, I should not have any sorrow. If you try to solve anything psychologically, that alone creates problem. So the intellect has some, it is some area, some jurisdiction only in the external world, in the outer world.
So we need to be really clear. Is it an
Oh.
external situation?
Yeah.
If it's internal and its feelings going,
Yeah.
then you're not damaging that with the intellect. Yeah?
When we shift from the idea that I can't do it, the idea, the identity, I can't do it, and we shift it over to, okay, God will do it. We've shifted from one idea to another, and it's this to the other God, other will do it. I've shifted from me to the other. So there could be just as much of an attachment to the other doing it as myself. The other meaning God.
So, if you expect the other will do if you, even though if you put your responsibility in the God, so thereby you expect something, then God will do something as you expected, then it is not putting your responsibility in the God. So if you, that putting your responsibility in the God means, you don't expect any salvation from that. So you don't expect any getting right from that.
You don't expect anything to come from God. You don't expect any, even though you shifted from I doing it to the God doing it, you don't expect the God to do anything. I don't quite understand.
Then only you put your responsibility in the God. Otherwise, if you get something taken by the God, then you are expecting something as if you are doing something. So if you expect God will do
well,
your
if
work.
I'm expecting God to do something, I've taken away from my own expectations of myself doing it. I'm expecting God to do it.
So it is actually, even though if we put something in the hands of God, so that God will do your work, that actually it is your work. Then only in that position also you are the doer.
So when I shift over from this to God, in fact, there can be no expectations. I mean, there's no expectations.
When there is no expectation,
it's unconditional. I can't put any conditions on God.
When you put everything in an unconditional manner, then there will be no doer.
There'll be no
doer.
doer, right? No doer, right?
I'll come into